all going to get to dip into the concepts of A Course in Miracles and get to witness to what degree you decide to be good or evil. And that's all it is. And you know, the funny thing is, you can wait as long as you want to be 100% good. God is so patient. And there's no shame in it, and there's no blame in it. You know, as long as you want to run around and do scientific experiments with your evil old self, you know what I mean? That's like, get it done. Get it done. Like, figure it out. And when we were in 12-step, they used to say, you know what? If you need to go do some more experimenting, go figure it out. You know what I mean? So generous. You need to hit bottom one more time? Great. Good on you. Go for it. But this is always going to be a soft place to land whenever you're ready. Whenever you want just the goodness of life. This is going to be a soft place to land. So today we are celebrating our dear friend Elizabeth. And I got to meet Elizabeth a couple of years ago through a phone call that we met. And we were talking to each other over the phone, and we were supposed to go to a conference. And I said to her, come on over. And she's like, I live kind of far. I'm like, so I'd sleep over at my house. She's like, well, I have a dog. I'm like, bring your dog. She's like, who are you? Weirdo. But slowly I've seduced her into my way of being. Indeed, slowly. And when I think about Elizabeth, I really do think about the core concepts of A Course in Miracles and what it takes to be a good teacher of God. And those concepts are trust and open-mindedness and honesty and generosity and joy. And she will be witnessed as that today during our celebration portion of our service, where we'll do a little ritual. But what I was guided to talk about today was the story in the Bible of Elizabeth. Do you remember the story of Elizabeth in the Bible? I remember as a kid that I would, listen to these stories, and ever the curious question asker, I always got myself into a little trouble. But I had a problem with this story, and I was surprised that no one else did, because Elizabeth was defined as the very thing that she wasn't. Elizabeth was recognized as something that was a complete lie. In every single story that you read about Elizabeth, the very first thing they tell you is she was barren. And that was not the truth. When I was little, I asked, what does barren mean? And that Elizabeth couldn't have children. And I thought, as a little kid, well, that's kind of sad, because I knew from the time I was a kid that I wanted babies. I love babies. I was a baby magnet, and I couldn't wait to have babies. And so I always felt like that's kind of sad. But by the end of the story, Elizabeth has a baby in her hand. So why did they tell us she was barren when she wasn't? Why did they define her as the very thing that she was not? It was an illusion of who she was. And that's what happens in our life. We get tagged something and nobody questions it. We just move forward and we go with the broken definition. But Elizabeth did not. And so in the story that we hear about Elizabeth, she is also this amazing midwife. She's this amazing consciousness, actually. So underrated and so underserved in the Bible. So Blessed Mother gets visited by an angel. And she says, you're going to give birth. And of course, this is, a very uncomfortable position that the Blessed Mother is in, because, she hasn't been with a man yet. But she says, how is this going to happen? The angel says, don't worry. We're going to take care of the details. And she says, let it be done unto me. So she gets out of her own way, and she says, I'm open to being a vessel, a channel for a miracle that's going to come to the world like a light. And then the angel says to her, go visit your cousin Elizabeth. So she goes to visit Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, who has also been experiencing this miracle, here's the Blessed Mother, here's Mary's story. I'm going to deliver a child unto the world that's going to be the light of the world. Now, most times in our society, we hear about women fighting women and pulling women down, broken stories about how women do not support each other. And that is not demonstrated in this story at all. Elizabeth is so overwhelmed with the joy of having a visitation from her cousin who is going to be birthing the light of the world. She becomes so enthused by this that she literally has a baby jump in her belly. That's what the story says. It says, upon hearing this, I feel a child in my own belly jump. Can you imagine being that type of a midwife? Where you are so overwhelmed by the joy of your sister that you get impregnated by this joy, and you too deliver your good? Do you know who Elizabeth is the mother of? Extra points for anybody who raises their hand. Nancy in the back. John the Baptist. A plus, Nancy. John the Baptist. And symbolically, John the Baptist is about helping us to erase the illusion of sin. Through a little bit of water and a little bit of willingness, he blesses us, right? So Elizabeth brings this idea into the world. These two noble women are standing knee to knee and eye to eye and saying we're going to be a part of the change of this great consciousness that's being birthed upon this planet. And then the wonderful thing is, during this time, Elizabeth's husband, his name is Zechariah. Am I right, Nancy?
I like the women.
Yeah. It is, Zechariah. And during her pregnancy, the angel causes Zechariah to become what? Do you know? Does anybody know? Mute. He becomes mute. And so, yeah, so he has no ability to speak. So the masculine, as beautiful as it is, becomes silenced during this 9 months. And so Elizabeth has to stand up and speak on her own behalf. And she is known as having a prophetic voice. So this is a beautiful story for all of us to recognize that sometimes we have to put the logical to sleep. How can I be pregnant at this time? How can I deliver this? Everybody knows I'm barren. How can I? And it says, put your logic to sleep. You know, the logic is the masculine, and it's beautiful to have the love and the law together, but at this point in this story, what we need is to move in faith, to move in untethered and unexplainable faith. And so the masculine goes to mute, and she stands up and she says, the child will be named John. And John's name, it means, you know, the favor of God. And so we have these symbols in this story that we don't have to move from a limited idea of ourselves. That we could lean into these beautiful stories that invite us into not underestimating God. Not underestimating God. And this is something that we just have the tendency to do all the time. Like we want to say, but God, I don't know how that's going to happen. Or the math doesn't add up. Or it didn't happen last time. Or everybody seems to be saying it differently. And still we're invited to step forward with an open mind and with an open heart and with open hands and say, I got my authority from God. And I don't need my authority from the world. That's not going to work today. I'm no longer going to rest in the limited beliefs of the world. That's just not going to work today. It didn't work then, it's not going to work now. The only thing that will work is the authority of God. And where you get the authority of God is through your own faith in that. And when we make space for the authority of God in our life, that means that all we need to do is to come without a plan, without an agenda. Our first interpretation of the plans of God, or the interpretations of God, are going to be met with resistance and fear. And that's normal, you know, because we're literally eroding the old story. And in the Course of Miracles, it says, you know, your worst fears will block the authority of God. And your very best plans will cast a shadow on the authority of God. So it's best if we withdraw completely and be, as St. Francis taught us, to be channels of God. So we can get ourselves out of the way and allow the great authority of God to move in our lives. And to have this plan of God unfold through us and for us. Because if it's the authority of God, it's beyond what we could even imagine. Did you imagine that you would find yourself in this beautiful jewel box on a Sunday morning being recognized as a teacher of God? Was this in your plan as a child on your vision board? Yes, and still there was a willingness and there was a desire. A desire means of the Father within you that was still finding its way and finding its course at the most perfect time, on the most perfect day, surrounded by the most perfect support. You know, not only have you been a divine midwife in my life, but you know how to cultivate midwife-ness in your own life. If you want to birth a book, sit next to her. You know, she literally helped me birth 2 books in 1 year. You know, if you want to have your dreams realized, plant them in fertile ground. Find yourself your midwives and support your midwives and be a midwife for others. That means that when someone comes to you with their ideas, to allow yourself to throw your hands in the air and say, yes, yes you can. Yes, you can do this. I believe in it. I see it. It's for you. And if it's for you and it doesn't harm anyone, then it will be done effortlessly. All that you need will be lined up perfectly for you, and you will demonstrate what it looks like to be a hot knife through butter. Now, this is the optimal idea, right? Now, it doesn't always seem that it looks like that in our lives, because a lot of times when we're we're delivering something into the world, we are also our own midwife, but we are also our own labor pains. Because we've invested in this idea of labor. You know, that by the sweat of my brow I will do this. And so as we move through it, there sometimes feels to be this back and forth, this, this awkward nature as we walk to God. That's not to be condemned. That's to be celebrated. When a child learns to walk, he doesn't do it with grace. He falls down, and then he gets up, and then he falls down, and then he gets back up again. And when a mother sees a child attempting to walk, the only thing she does is, get the camera! Let's celebrate this awkward, drunken little child, And so, but for us, as we attempt new things and we see ourselves wobbling towards our destination, we go, oh, it's so embarrassing. Oh my God, I'm so awkward. Oh, this isn't how it's supposed to be. So we have to let that go. This is how it looks right now. Then this is perfect. If we get hung up on that awkward chapter, which is still very short, look at a man's life. How long did it take him during that short chapter to learn to walk? And the rest of it, he was walking, like a graceful Fred Astaire. He was dancing and running and winning marathons. So we never judge him by that little hour. Why do we judge ourselves by that little hour? And why do we judge Elizabeth for that little time when she was bearing, when in fact she has given such great birth into the world? So I think it's time, as we celebrate Elizabeth, to really allow ourselves to celebrate that within us that is seeking to know a bolder definition of ourselves. Not the one that's been stamped on us by our lineage, by our parents, by our relatives, by our neighborhood, but the one that's seeking to be expressed through us, that is beyond what we could even think to ask for. Today's the day that not only do we get to celebrate it in Elizabeth, but we get to celebrate it in ourselves, because what you give returns to you multiplied abundantly. So each of us here gets the opportunity to not only celebrate Elizabeth, but to be Elizabeth for Elizabeth. Do you get that? She's coming to us, she's coming to us like the blood of nothing, like I'm going to birth this ministry. And it's ours to say, that is so awesome, I'm going to birth mine right along with you. I'm going to let this ignite within me my own passion, my own ministry. And it can be done, and it shall be done as I get out of the way and let God have His holy authority in my life. Can I get an amen? Amen! Invite Elizabeth up. She's going to speak her mission statement, and then we're going to hold a little ritual for her.
I have to say, because you were talking about lying, the first sentence of this whole mission statement that I gave last week at my ordination is a lie. I just thought I'd slap it, because the first sentence is, being a minister was never on my agenda. And one of my closest friends was a minister in a huge, gorgeous church in Worcester, Massachusetts. And I went to visit her, and I climbed up into the pulpit and looked at this gorgeous church. It was empty at the time. It was huge. And I said to her, every week you get to tell people how to live their lives? That's the greatest job in the world. And later, as I found myself studying to be a minister, I realized that is not what being a minister is. Which is why, at the time, she said no. It was, some of you met Maria Felipe a few times, because she's been here a couple of times, and she was the initial catalyst. We were at a retreat in Costa Rica, and she inspired me. She kept saying, Elizabeth, you're going to be a minister. Elizabeth, you're going to study for the ministry. And I'm like, no. I had just retired from teaching college for a long, long time, and I have to say I was pretty depressed, because I loved teaching. It was my joy and my bliss, and when I lost that, I was feeling very empty. So I stuck my feet into the water of studying for the ministry, and I liked it. So, Maria is a lot like Maureen. She coaxes and pushes, and you can say no only just so long. So through Maria, I met Maureen and the miraculous tribe at SpeakEasy and the transformative elixir of miracles 365 every morning. Today I'm a different woman because of the experience. I understand the course much more deeply, thanks to Charlie, too, who leads my course group for 3 or 4 years now. Yeah, longer? I'm so old. Certainly I've been given tools that I can both use and share with others. I'm now qualified to offer courses like Healing the Inner Child and Awakening to Inner Wisdom, and I'll be offering them through SpeakEasy. I have the opportunity to create a rich, meaningful life of service during my retirement. It's a blessing, as you said, I could never have imagined. But that's not the real gift. The real gift of this minister program is the way all my relationships have transformed. The most impactful change has been in how I see God. For most of my life, I have believed that God was just as judgmental as I am. You're supposed to laugh at that. Thanks! I have come to see that I was deeply mistaken. My fear of God has been replaced gently and quietly with a deep trust and gratitude. With every minute, with every holy instant, with every request to new vision instantly answered, I have encountered a new God, and it's changed everything. As I dug deeply into all the ministerial material and I wrote my heart out, facing truth about myself I had avoided, as I shared in a safe way with a wise, compassionate sister, first Maria, then Barb Adams, and also always Maureen, I came to understand so much about who I have been and how I have seen myself and those I love. Old stories of victimhood, they just don't have the power they used to have, and they never last long. I always know I can choose again. More and more, I recognize that perception is always projection. As I see my brothers and sisters, that's how I see myself. The more I'm able to extend love outside of me, the more love I find within. So what do we do when we find the yummiest pizza, the most beautiful song, the best movie? We share it, of course. It's our nature. So as a Pathways of Light minister, I'm happy, honored, and grateful to be able to share what has changed my life. So thank you, Maria, Barb, and Maureen, and Charlie, and all of you, all the beautiful teachers on the morning calls. I know that Holy Spirit will continue to bring the perfect people into my life. Even if, like me, they may not even know what they want yet. But as the Course tells us, when she is ready to learn, the opportunities to teach will be provided for her.
It in the mail for Elizabeth, and look how perfect it looks on you.
To share the recollections that I have of the generosity that I see. That, you know, the first encounter that we had was when I came into SpeakEasy and you were reading. In life, you see, encounter lots of readers, and you know, have you write a name tag, and they'll kind of show you where to go and what to do. But you know, your spirit just wraps around people like a blanket. When I walked in, and you know, it just was so much more. It's like, here, let me take your coat, and you know, oh, these are your darling granddaughters, and you know, just this sense of care that you provide, you know, that just exudes from you.
You know, Jesus says in the Course, God loves a joyful learner, you know, and so that has been you for me. You touched on retiring and coming in, and, you know, at the start of this being depressed. And I don't recall the depression, but I do recall the joy. I do recall the openness and the willingness, you know. Jesus says all you need to really be on this path is a little bit of willingness. And you've always exuded that. You've always been there with that willingness for all of us. And so, as you just touched on, so willing also to share that, to give it, and to help others on the path along with you. So it's been a real joy and a blessing to have you in my life, and it continues. So, I'm blessed. Thanks for the grace.
There was always a gentleness about you. So I'd be usually sitting on that side, and I would be watching you and Pam traveling from afar, and you were steady, and you were always here. And I thought, there's a commitment. So to me, without knowing you, I had to watch what I saw. I saw gentleness. I felt there was always a good listener in you, because your presence was here, and yet you weren't always speaking, you were listening. So to me, I thought to myself, if I needed a friend or I needed someone, I could go to Elizabeth, not knowing you. So gentleness, faithful, caring, generously caring, a great listener, steady, and then that you are moved by the Spirit, and that God is living in you, and it's demonstrated through your actions. So, congratulations.
Elizabeth and I met 3 years ago, and nothing happened, and then we met 2 years ago, and nothing happened. We exchanged phone numbers. We took the right time, and then finally the right time came last year. And I feel real honored to know Elizabeth now. And she demonstrates trust as a teacher of God in my mind. And also that she has the quality of gentleness. And I see that in the course group that we have. We have a couple people in our small course group that she was willing to put together, and that was trust all by itself. She's so gentle as we read through the book, explaining and telling them that they understand and they're right on target. And I feel very privileged to know you and to know you as a teacher of God.
Ever since you came, and it's just been lovely to know you. And she joined the board, which she says yes instead of no, and I can't, and she steps in. So you put your foot in. I'm very proud of you. I'm proud of you for a lot of reasons right now. One of the things I'm most proud of you is that you may be over 25, I'm not sure, but that you've said yes to further learning, to just learning new ways of doing things, putting yourself out there, going through and finishing what you started. And so we're grateful to have you here at SpeakEasy. And you show up every week with that beautiful smile. And she helps with greeting and makes everybody feel comfortable. And so thank you for that, for showing us that there's a generous way to do things, and just say yes. Thank you.
I've had the unique experience of being your best friend for 37 years. And I've watched you grow and change. And I'm so impressed with your commitment to honesty and always being out there and always being real and encouraging everybody who loves you to do the same. And I just love you so much. Thank you.
What I noticed about you, and I didn't even think I met you yet, I think we met on the call, kind of, right? So I just felt this courage and compassion every time we talked, every time you shared, and then you started teaching. And it seemed the more connected I got with my divine and everyone else on the call, which you helped a lot, the happier everyone was. So I just thank you for that. So congratulations.
I've always enjoyed, and I think about the 15 years we've known each other, your incredible, irreverent humor. and such the way teaching what it always meant to you, and the way you the Spirit moved through you and changed you the way you opened. You know, like all the students that were on the fumes, you know, like in their lives, in creative writing, like you had vets that had just come home and single moms that were going out of their mind, and somehow your class was a home, and I was just like so taken with that, and you made such a difference from the very beginning in my life. But I have to say, it gets better. Like, since you were involved in this, I've seen so much more, like, buoyancy and optimism, and it seduces me to use Maureen's word.
You get them all. So I brought with me some rose water because of John the Baptist and use of water, and rose for the Blessed Mother. When I became introduced to A Course in Miracles, I was in Medjugorje on a pilgrimage with the Blessed Mother. So I think it's really appropriate that we should use some holy water for you today. I'm just going to spritz it on you, and so you are the Holy Mother, you are the dancing star, you are eternal laughter, you heal the sacred scar. You are the light of God's love that shines upon the world. You are